Hey y'all, you're listening to Diagnosing Sitcoms and Movies, the DSM podcast. We help make mental health more comfortable by using Black movies and shows we know and love and culture to remove stigma. So join our convo with your host, Courtney Copeland, licensed mental health counselor.
And Dr. B, licensed professional counselor.
Before we jump in today, I just wanted to mention that our YouTube page is now up. So for anyone that missed our launch party Zoom, then you can go back and check that out. We had so much fun. It was such a good time. Rosie, didn't you have fun?
I had an amazing time. And I the games, oh my gosh, I think that was the best part of it, other than the trailer release. But the games were definitely popping. And I think the audience enjoyed the games too. So they recommended that we do that more often. So maybe we can set that up.
Yes, I definitely feel like we might need to do another DSM podcast game night because our listeners are so much fun and they're super smart. Like they got every single one.
They did, except for me.
I wasn't going to mention it, but you know. Anywho,
score loser.
Yes, important. Sportsmanship is always a good characteristic to have. I also wanted to, commemorate this episode with acknowledging that I just finished my first week in my PhD graduate school program. Only 259 more weeks to go. But Dr. B is always is my light at the end of the tunnel because she just finished her first week as a tenured track assistant professor.
Yes. I know. So what was your experience like as a first year PhD student?
Just a lot of reading.
Oh my gosh, isn't it? Can I give you a tip?
Yes, please. I know. All of them.
Okay, so one tip. Don't tell anyone I told you this. Just kidding. It's aired on a podcast.
Right.
So one tip that I would give my students is you're going to have 20 readings, literally assigned 20 readings for a week. I would definitely start with your textbook. You know, that's the main source of the material. Usually, if there are articles assigned, I would choose the ones that relate and the ones that you find more appealing and interesting that you would actually make the effort to read. And then the others, I would simply skim. You are going to learn the art of skimming.
Girl, I am already masterful in that art.
Exactly.
I've been in school forever.
Right, exactly. So you have to really learn that art of skimming. I'm like, when students tell me it's so much reading, I can't keep up. I'm like, you're not going to be able to keep up. Just read the abstract for the ones that you think you can't read. That's going to be like 20 pages. And the discussion, okay? And here's the other note that I would give you. I would make a note, take a sheet and try to write out a little note to yourself for each of the readings, so that if it's discussed in class, you're able to kind of spit, and then your classmates are going to be like, "Oh my God, she read," and it's like, "Yeah, not really."
Thank you.
Yeah. So,
all right, guys. That's the tips and tricks from the Diagnosing Sitcoms and Movies podcast. Hope you enjoyed that segment.
You're welcome.
But this episode, we are talking about, I believe, one of Rosie's favorite movies of all time. Actually, it's not even really a movie, and I had to keep correcting myself. It is a mini-series. And so we are talking about The Temptations miniseries, originally aired in 1998 for television on ABC. Maybe it's just because they did such a good job staying true to the time of the film, but why does this feel like it's so much older than 1998?
Well, because, this is, it kind of takes us on the journey of the development of the Temptations, so for us to see them in the early, 60s and what they had to deal with, being a part of Motown. And then, the development of Motown at that time. And also one of the most interesting parts of the Temptations movie, I'm sorry if I'm getting ahead of myself, but was really, as an adult, really seeing the problems with segregation, the problems with, like the actual just racism when they're traveling and touring, right? And so one of the things that Otis definitely talks about in the film was that one time they go to this school and there's a clear divider amongst the audience and these students. Black students on one side, white students on the other side. And then the next time that they come, they're actually together. And, just really documenting that part was interesting to let us know, like, this wasn't an easy journey, but white people loved our music, but still treated us like trash, which is kind of the same sentiment in which we're going through, where right now, white people are enjoying our culture, but then don't necessarily respect us as individuals.
I definitely agree. And I also am glad that you had spoke to that Otis was the one that had mentioned it. And so this entire miniseries was brought about because Otis had wrote a book called Temptations. And so the entire story is basically told from his lens because the book was written from his lens. And so there were cases and litigation against him because of some minor inaccuracies. Some major inaccuracies as well, but I guess he was telling his story, so we have to look at it from his point of view. And so because there are actual real people involved that we're going to be discussing, these are human character beings, real life people, I just wanted to kind of give that disclaimer that we are going to be diagnosing from what was discussed and shown in the film. And we don't want to in any way taint anyone's legacy based off of what was shown in the film. And so we're not diagnosing them as individuals. We are diagnosing their representation in the film Temptations. And with all of that said, I just wanted to say, ain't nobody coming to see you, Otis.
The best line. But you know what? I never picked that up as a kid.
Really?
How shady that was. I never picked that up as a kid. No. And now to this day, like, I don't know, like when I watched The Temptations, it was a sad story, but like as a kid, it was a sad story. Obviously it is a sad story, but as an adult, there were some parts that were actually kind of funny to me.
Yes.
Including that part, right? Well, before we get started, I think it's important for us to, for one, kind of give a little summary of what the Temptation movie was about. I don't know if I'll do a good job about it.
Give me your quotables first, and then we'll jump into that.
Okay, yeah. All right. So my favorite part, my quotable would be when Otis comes home after getting his hair permed. Actually, before that, because the barber was like, I think you would want the New Yorker. And Otis looked at him like, the fuck? And so then he gets this, and then you get to the scene where both him and, oh my God, why am I missing his name? I want to call him Paul.
It was Al.
Al. Him and Al are in the chair with their perm, and they're like, woo!
That like burning that scalp.
Standing themselves. Right. And he said, and I thought y'all was singers. Oh my gosh. That had me dying as an adult. And then when he gets home and his mom is like, oh, you did it. And he's like, do you like it? And she's like, I'll think about it. And so when she comes out
shade
and right, I'll think about it. And so his dad or his stepfather, I'm realizing, and correct me if I'm wrong, it does seem as if that's not his biological father.
I've never noticed that.
Right, because he said, it's just the vibe that I get in the relationship with them. That it's like, no son of mine, but it didn't seem like that was his original son. So maybe I'm making that up. Maybe it's just something that I'm looking into a little more deeply than I need to.
Transference,
maybe. I do feel like there's some daddy son issues. Anyway, So he
definitely.
He's like, what did you do to your... No, his little brother says, what did you do to your hair? And then his father comes in and he's like, go wash that stuff out. He's like, I can't. Tell him, Mama, tell him I can't. And she was like, I just decided. I like it. And I was like, see, that's the type of mama I'm going to be. I want to support my kids and their crazy hairstyles too. But then his little brother had a dig, you know, as little brothers do. He was like, it looks like he lost a bet.
That was funny to me.
So
like this is what losing a bet looks like. It looks like I die and lay to the side.
Yes. And then, of course, the conversation at the table, talking about how cornbread got his name. That's another quotable that I enjoy. But that's it for me. What were some of your favorites?
Well, you know I'm a Bessie Petty woman, so mine was without David Ruffin, y'all ain't nothing. Without David Ruffin, y'all a bunch of fake ass temptations.
How did I not have that on my list?
Okay, so
David Ruffin.
That one was funny, but then I felt funny and hurt for when they were looking at him out the window and Shelly went outside to tell him that he was kicked out of the group. He said, y'all can't do me like this, and ripped the paper up and said, you ungrateful son of a bitches. I said, he meant that. Yes, Leon. Yes.
He played the hell out of David Ruffin for sure. You know what? I'm sorry to cut you off, but there was another line from David Ruffin when he's in a limousine and he was like, David Ruffin and what's their names?
And they bust out laughing.
Yes, that is my shit. Like, I was like, and what's their name? I said, he's shady. Go ahead.
Special shout out to Leon for playing every R&B singer from the 60s.
Did it spectacularly.
Yes,
I wonder if that's really his voice. Was that really his voice?
The singing one was not. But when he was supposed to have been high and drunk in the house and he was singing, I refuse to let you go. That was him.
All right.
That was really him. All right. So The Temptations is the story of the Originals, Mighty Temptations singing group, how they formed in their early years, found success with the historic record label Motown, and continued to grow their careers until, and the story actually follows them all the way until most of their untimely passings, unfortunately. I do believe that Otis was the one of the original members, was the one to live the longest. And since he gets to tell the story. It's kind of how it seems. We're hearing his point of view because he outlived everybody. I don't know how fair that is, but it gave us a great film. Miniseries.
It did.
Rosie, why is this one of your favorite movies of all time?
It's one of my favorite movies because I enjoy all of the songs. All of the songs. Even like the songs that, of course, like are for the Temptations, but also the songs in between. Like, you know, when they have, for instance, the first song that comes to mind is when they're in the milk truck, Alice's father's milk truck. And the scene starts with, there's a moon out tonight. Like, I mean, there's so many different songs. So as a kid, I literally know all the songs in the movie. I can sing along with all the songs. And I've started to even learn some of the dances and everything. So I think it was like my version of High School Musical, if you will, because there's the sing-alongs, there's the dancing, but then there's also the drama and the storytelling that I really enjoyed about it. So that's why it's my favorite, because I can sing. Why not?
Very true. Music is important. And music is very important to this movie. We've seen, unfortunately, some documentaries where the music could not be cleared and it was terrible. So whenever someone is doing stories about musical figures, it's just always important that they can use that original music. And like you said, not just that for the Temptations, but all throughout the film. I think Motown being involved was really awesome because it allowed them to use quality, true to the time music.
Right.
So, like, I don't know if you know, but my first job was at Johnny Rockets. I was a hostess. And so
I had no idea.
Yes, it's very embarrassing. I had to wear the hat and do the dances and everything. A couple of my friends walked past and laughed at me, but it's okay.
Wait. So what is a Johnny Rockets?
Johnny Rockets it's like a 50s, 60s themed hamburger restaurant, like hamburgers and milkshakes. And so there's tiny juke boxes at every booth, and And so they played this type of music. Yeah, it's really cute. And so my favorite song that I used to hear every single day at work was the song that they opened the movie with. I can't sing, so I won't sing it for you. But yeah. So that opening credit song is what they usually have.
You know what? I remember Otis doing his, because he was copying the singer, the lead singer in the beginning. He was like, yeah, I'm feeling it. He was really feeling it. And so I remember this song, but it's not coming to me right now. I see the scene, but I can't think of the song. Dang it.
I have no idea what it's called, but it's like if they often call me Speedo, but my real name is Mister.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It's that one.
But baby, the type of acrobats that they were doing on that stage,
the roll and jump, spins and dives and
the push-ups and oh my God.
Girl.
We don't get entertainment like that no more.
No wonder the singers got all the booty. Like, look at their performance.
Right?
The athleticism you had to have in order to sing.
Ooh, I just love watching them dance and gyrate like that on the stage. Gyrating.
But yes, I'm the same way. If I go to a show, you better light yourself on fire. You better earn my little coins that I done worked hard to come see you with.
Right, like Kevin Hart said, throw some flames on that bitch.
And so the movie starts out really showing the characters, how they met each other, how they originally formed their groups. And one thing that really stuck out to me was the fact that so many groups were teenagers when they first started. They were really, really young. And that kind of continues to this day. A lot of musical artists are really young. And I really feel like it's designed to take advantage of these kids. Like you can work them for long hours. They don't understand the contracts that they're signing. You can take advantage of them and they'll listen to you.
Right. And so the only difference now is like kids aren't doing it together as groups. They're doing it individually. I know. And we've seen the music industry abuse and misuse a lot of groups' talent. I mean, we're talking not only the Motown groups, but now we're even getting into the point where TLC had their issues with their contracts.
New Edition.
Right. So all these people are coming
Meg
out.
Thee Stallion.
Okay, talk about relevancy. And so like this is really just kind of giving us an insight to what is it really like being in the music industry, But I was like, wow, the first person was what's her name? Johnny May. Your producer,
yes.
Your manager. Now get your ass in here. And like she said, they sound good. She was ready I think she was ready to take advantage of them on a whole nother level. But I'm glad they got out of that one because she was shady.
It only took them to question the money one time, and she, get your ass out my car.
It was so funny.
Oh, another funny part to me. When they went to the radio station and Kid from Kid and Play was the radio disc jockey.
The disc jockey, yeah.
He was like, "Come on, we gotta hurry up. I gotta be back before his last teardrop fall." Why Blue was like, "Wait, that's a window.
That's a window. He said, go through it.
Get your ass through the window.
And so when he gets downstairs, he was like, oh, look at this milk truck. Gotta give me some milk when I come back. Al almost lost his shit. He said, mention anything about that milk truck. I was like, Jesus. Al really has some problems, but we'll get into that in just a second.
The taking advantage of the teenager.
Yes.
And so I don't know if you ever saw the movie Talk to Me with Don Cheadle, and he was supposed to be Petey Green, who was another famous radio disc jockey. But Petey Green has said, I'm sorry, I apologize if I called Mr. Berry Gordy a pimp. I'm sorry for ever making it sound like he was plucking these little ghetto kids out of the hood, teaching them how to walk, how to talk, and how to get out there and make his money. And I was like, he was. That's exactly what he was doing.
And listen, Smokey Robinson was right there to write the songs for him. Let's talk. Okay.
There's so much. There's so much.
Gang banging. Okay. He wrote the song Gang Banging. Look that shit up. It's a real song. I'm concerned about it. Why was that not out here? I'm like, you wrote wonderful hits for so many people. Why would you write that for yourself? Why? But we'll table that one.
And there was really like, well, first, I wonder if Smokey still got it in him, because I haven't heard a song written by Smokey in so long. But he is like a genius. You don't lose that type of talent. No. So I wonder if he's just sitting on hits and it's just like,
we're gonna have to do a Google.
Tuesday. No, yeah, good point.
I mean, but he's probably earning a lot of royalties. Do you think? Maybe?
Perhaps? I mean, of course. Yeah. Yes. I mean, he doesn't have to put out any more hits. I just wonder, if the pen game is still strong. That's all I want to know. Smokey, if you're listening, let me know. I can't sing the song for you, but
I'll try.
Okay, you can sing the new theme song for for the DSM podcast.
I will. Let me call him up and get him to write something.
Right. Otis was spilling a lot of tea in this film too, though, like low key. Like I did not know that Diana Ross was messing with Eddie Kendricks before she started messing with Berry Gordy.
Mm-hmm.
I also did not know that Florence Ballard was basically the reason why him and his wife broke up.
That's crazy. And that introduction, she was like, hi, Joe, I'm Flo. Like, girl, didn't nobody ask you to shorten my name to match yours? Oh, hussy.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to take my man. And that was something
I like
that
Florence
I noticed.
in real life, though. So I can't even be mad at her because I like her in real life.
No, I take it back. I called her hussy. But, no, but, Otis' behavior after he cheated, with trying to shower her with presents, and she was not trying to have it. Even after they were separated, he was still trying to get in them drawers. Like, I'm gonna come over and hang out with you. And she was like, no. She was done. Right, she was done. And I appreciated that.
Yes, I was proud of her because a lot of women do. It would be very easy, I'd rather say. Yes. Not a lot of women. I'm not going to lump anyone into any categories, but I would say it would be very easy to just accept the gifts, continue to be showered, continue to live the lifestyle, build a pattern with somebody who you have a child with, have been with since you were a teenager. It would be very easy to fall into a negative pattern with somebody that way. And so I was very proud of her for putting up her boundaries from the film, as soon as she saw like, oh no, did you just kiss Florence goodbye? Oh, hell no. Nah. Walk home.
Okay. Okay. And it was like, just from that kiss alone, she knew something was up.
Mm-hmm.
And so from my understanding and how Otis filmed or created that story, it was just a kiss on the cheek. But after that, shit, we might as well go ahead and do the whole thing if my wife won't treat me like this. Shady. Shady.
I have so many thoughts about Otis. I don't know if I want to diagnose him. I don't know if from what he gave us, we fully can't. I feel like it's purposeful. Like, yes, if I'm writing a story about me, I'm going to be the star of my story. But I know in someone else's film, I sure enough could be the villain. So like, I feel like in his story, he made himself perfect, like tried to paint himself as perfect. Even his infractions, he still made not so bad.
Right, exactly. You know, and so he's the one that kept the group together, you know. He's the one that kept everybody responsible. I believe there was even a line that came from David Ruffin, you know, saying that you always were hard on us, you know. And so when they were actually coming back together as a group to do their performances. And so it did kind of give him this halo effect that, yes, I am the person that kept everyone together. I am the one that, you know, kept the temptations going, you know. And even Eddie talked about it when he was just like, so you're just gonna get rid of all the temptations before we know it, it's just gonna be you and Blue, right? And so I do think it was over exaggerated how just perfect and wonderful he was.
All of that led me to feel like, and like even this stuff that he did share made me feel like Otis probably has some serious power and control issues. I felt that probably did stem from the relationship that he had with his father, stepfather, whatever we are saying that he is, father figure. Okay. Because it did seem like his dad was the man of the house. And once Otis got to a point where he was trying to assert himself as an adult man in the house, his dad was like, I'll get the big piece of chicken, nigga, don't you ever forget it. And so I feel like he kind of carried that into his, the way that he kind of managed the group. Even when, Johnny May? Even when Johnny May tried to do for the group, he said, wait a minute, this here my group.
This my group.
And so I definitely felt like he had some serious power and control issues. And I was kind of playing with, tossing back and forth, narcissistic personality disorder. I wanted to get your intake on that.
Well, I wouldn't say it's narcissistic. I mean, he has a narcissistic personality. I wouldn't necessarily diagnose him with it. You know, I do think that he, like, you know, he enjoyed being the leader. He just, I just think that he knew what he wanted. I think he was very goal driven, and he wasn't going to let any or anything stop him from seeing his vision through. So being someone, I am very goal driven. I am, you know, at the point where it's like, if I make up my mind to do something, little to nothing is going to stop me from getting it done. And I think he had tunnel vision for his group, period. You know, because that's what he wanted. That was his goal. So nothing, not your alcoholism, not you beating your wife, not Motown. Y'all are not going to stop me from doing my thing. So I wouldn't necessarily, it's narcissism. I do feel like he might have put more into the group, and it might be self-esteem things, you know, because the group was him. He couldn't separate himself.
And see, that's what concerned me. Like, he couldn't separate himself from the group. It was an extension of him. However, there still was no one man above the group. So,
right.
Was it no one man above the group, or is it an extension of you? At the end of the day, is it you above the group?
And that's exactly why Eddie called him on his shit. You know, Eddie was like, you say no one above the group, but you just ready to replace every fucking body every time you get a chance or you see a threat to what you want. Right. Especially with Paul having to sit out a couple things. It was like, all right, well, we just get someone to replace Paul. I thought that was so messed up.
And he said, he's going to throw Paul away like Alabama trash. I said, what are they doing to Alabama to they trash? Eddie is so afraid.
Okay. Listen.
He's going to throw him out like Alabama trash. I don't know why that was so funny to me.
Out of all the states, Alabama just does their
Because
trash.
I mean, they both are from Alabama, so I got that. But like Alabama trash.
Right.
Or just say, hey, what are y'all doing to y'all trash in Alabama that you could not stand to see him treated like that?
One thing I did realize my first time watching this. No, this is like my 500th time watching this movie. But watching it, especially to talk about it, how Blue took off running from Otis when he actually approached him to join the group. And he was like, oh man, I thought you were trouble. So it made me think about, like, was there gang banging happening in that time, as early as that time in Detroit, where you have to take off running because somebody trying to ask you to be a part of the group? Mama Rose wasn't having it though. But, she was like, now how I know you any different from these other folks? He was like, I don't know, ma'am. And you know what? I do want the type of friendship that Blue and Otis had. I feel like that's us.
No, ma'am.
What?
No,
he was
ma'am.
Okay, explain.
Okay, and so I fully and prepared to do so. I diagnosed Blue with dependent personality disorder. All right.
Okay.
So
can you explain dependent personality? Pull it out, because our listeners need to know what dependent personality disorder is.
I want y'all to hear me flipping through, getting my page together.
Because Dr. B doesn't have her book today. She's unprepared.
Okay. So, a pervasive and excessive need to be taken care of that leads to submissive and clinging behavior that fears of separation, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts, as indicated by 5 or more of the following: difficulty making everyday decisions without an excessive amount of advice and reassurance from others. He stopped several times and said, what do you think, Otis? Or when it came down to the vote, he really didn't want to express his opinion. Needs others to assume responsibility for most major areas of his or her life. When he originally was asked to be in the group, he said, it's not up to me. We had to go ask Mama Rose.
True.
Has difficulty expressing disagreement with others because of fear of loss of support or approval. Again, not wanting to voice his opinions. Has difficulty initiating projects or doing things on his or her own because lack of self-confidence in judgment or abilities rather than a lack of motivation and energy. Goes to excessive lengths to obtain nurturance and support from others to the point of volunteering to do things that are unpleasant. That man had to relearn how to walk and taught himself how to dance because he was not going to be the weak link in the group. He needed to be there and get the support from his group mates.
He was even willing to go through cortisone shots, even though the doctor told him it's time to hang up his dancing shoes.
Exactly. Feels uncomfortable or helpless when alone because of exaggerated fears of being unable to care for himself. I don't know if that one necessarily applies to him. Urgently seeks another relationship as a source of care and support when a close relationship ends, and is unrealistically preoccupied with fears of being left to take care of himself or herself. I don't want neither one of us to be dependent.
Okay, when you put it that way, no, I don't want that to be our friendship. Jeez. I was just saying, like, the loyalty he had to Blue. But, I mean, when you say it like that, never mind. Don't be Blue. Or Otis. Shoot. Okay,
Which is why I felt like Otis might potentially be narcissistic, because I felt like that Blue is dependent. And you use that for your benefit.
Okay, well, fine. How about we be like Paul and Eddie?
I will be Paul. Don't you let them throw me out like no Alabama trash.
I won't. I will not. And if you can't sing, then I'm not going on that stage. And that was
not on that stage. I'm not on that stage.
Damn right. Shoot.
Okay. I really appreciate this movie. I feel like it was important for us to include this movie in the podcast and really talk about it, because it talks about and it shows Black men living and coping with life. There's a lot of life that happens in this movie. Aside from just being in a group, there's a lot of life that happens. And all of the main characters are Black men. And we get to see Black men handle things differently, come with different experiences, different childhood things that happen to them. We get to see Black friendship, relationships. I just really appreciated seeing a film from a Black male lens and it feeling honest. Because I feel like we don't always get that in film. Even when the main character is a Black male, sometimes it doesn't feel like genuine reactions. But it being based on a true story, it felt like, no, this is really how people would respond being put in this situation. So I really liked being able to see that from them.
When you say that, what's an example? What's a scene that comes to mind? I can think of a few.
Unfortunately, the first thing that comes to mind is the scene where we first start to see Paul spiraling out of control. And seeing how that presented in a party. You've been at that party. Like, we've all been at that party where one of the family members ends up drinking too much and too much truth comes out, or you see how they're really feeling and it gets a little awkward, but everybody knows that they're going through something. So they just try to be there for that person. It just felt really genuine. Unfortunately, that part was somebody's pain, but I liked seeing the camaraderie of them supporting each other. If Paul's not going on that stage, I'm not going on that stage. I like seeing the Black boy joy in the beginning of the film between Blue and Otis, and them joining the group and them practicing at the beginning. And we got to sell sex. Come on. We got to 1, 2, 3 Al.
Right.
And so I just liked seeing Black men as the characters telling their story genuinely.
Yeah. You know, when I actually think about Otis again, sharing his mother dying of cancer, right? That scene where they're on the porch and she's telling him that, no, she's going to make it to the next concert. You know, she's going to be all right. And he does cry, because it seemed like she was his biggest fan. She was clearly his biggest fan from day one. And so it was almost like you could tell, like, he was mourning her loss even before she was going. Another Otis moment that was very genuine in showing real life was, the depiction of him finding out when he lost his son, and going through that. Or even just him playing basketball with his son.
And when that little boy said, "Why you always on road?" Oh, he said road, real ugly.
Road.
But
I know
him, like Otis, coming to the realization, like, just being a provider isn't enough. Your son wants you. He needs you there. And I feel like that might have been a value that he picked up from his father younger, because his father was, every time we saw him, he was coming in from work, or he looked like he had on his work clothes. And so, and their biggest issue was Otis wanting to sing as opposed to going to work in the factory. And so Otis really seeing, like, okay, just being a provider isn't enough. That's not all that I wanted from my dad neither. So let me really be there for my son. And then they were able to build a relationship.
And as soon as he was able to do that, it was like a difference for him. But then he dies later. So it was really an unfortunate part of the story when you say the personal things that they were dealing with. That's what I think about.
There's a lot of grief and loss in this movie, and like in different ways.
Yeah.
Not just the death of people, but the loss of, like, Paul not being able to be in a group. That was a real loss to him, and caused a lot of the, things that were going on. And just for everybody, just the trauma that David experienced at a young age. So being bartered to a pimp as a child and then being raised by that person, I couldn't imagine.
Right. And so it's almost like when someone says that or discloses that to you as a group, Do you really want to take someone like that in when they say rules are made to be broken? He already gave us the red flag. He did. Even when he was outside of the tour bus, reflecting on where he was, I think that was his moment to say, you know what, this is where I am in my life, and I didn't expect to be here, but shit, I'm here. And it almost seems as if, like, right then and there, he made this drastic switch to being this asshole. Like, he seemed very somber and willing and just eager to be a part of the group. And then he turned into this controlling asshole. Like, does fame and power really do that to people? And it's like, yes, clearly.
I think that for him, though that's common with people who have experienced childhood trauma. When he was outside of the bus, he was crying. He said, for the first time in my life, I belong to something that's right. And then so him wanting to be a part of the group so bad, that's that emotional hunger that he was trying to satisfy because he didn't have that fantasy bond that he was trying to build within the group. But then once he achieved that, because he was at such a place of lack when it came to nurturing, all of his relationships were turbulent. So once that was satisfied for him, he's used to a certain level of chaos that he had to maintain. Agreed.
So when you said that, I immediately went to the scene when they're at the park where Blue and Eddie is correcting him about how he treated his woman at this picnic, at this Motown picnic. Like, you can't just talk to your woman like that. And by the way, you haven't been coming to practice. What's that about? And who is this wingman that you keep bringing along with you?
Okay, so there's so many things I have to talk about there.
Well, let's go there.
So whenever this is to listeners, and I'll use examples. Whenever there is a person who is either in the limelight, has a little fame, or they just are in a position where they get to move a little bit different, and they have that one friend around that does absolutely nothing but has multiple positions and jobs and hats for this person, and no one understands why they're around, that's the go get drugs person. That's the person that goes and gets the drugs. In this instance, it was Flynn. If you think about watching this film again, I said, I don't know why it made me think about Lamar Odom. But Lamar Odom, when Chloe and him had that television show, there was that short, older, fat white dude who he kept around him. And Chloe was like, why do you hang out with him? I hate him. And then I was looking at him and I was like, that's the dude that goes and gets his drugs. Like, he serves no purpose. There's no one seems to like him. He's just here. That's the guy to go get drugs. So whenever I think that the rest of the group was justified in their dislike for Flynn. They're not wanting Flynn to be around because they knew what he was about, what he was there for. He was the go get drugs dude. And so they was like, yeah, Flynn, or whatever your name is, go get your ass out of here. And then also talking about David's relationship with Tammy Terrell, which was another turbulent relationship. Tammy Terrell had actually suffered, I believe it was like brain tumors. And that is what ended up killing her because she had so much blunt force trauma to the head because she was being beaten in multiple relationships with famous singers. David Ruffin being one of them, James Brown being another one of them. Yes, she ended up really, domestic violence is what really caused the illnesses that killed Tammy Terrell.
I did not know that.
Yes. And then I believe I saw it in a documentary. Maybe it was her unsung, because a lot of people in this film, a lot of characters that are described in this film had unsung. Shout out to TV One for highlighting these unsung Black heroes.
Yes.
Marvin Gaye went through a lot of survivor's guilt of feeling like, well, maybe I should have did more to get her out of those relationships. Maybe I should have, spent more time with her so she didn't feel like she needed to be in those relationships, in those romantic relationships with those men. Like, as a friend, I should have done more because all of that blunt force trauma. There's a rumor it has not been confirmed nor negated that she was hit in the head with a hammer.
Wow.
By one of her intimate partners.
Mm.
And that is, that coupled with the years of traumatic brain injury, constantly being hit like that, it just wasn't good. And if David had disclosed earlier to the group members, like this, the strap came out. It seemed like the strap just came out on its own. Like if he's used to that violence and that is the expression of care, I can only imagine what that relationship was like.
Right.
And so hurt people. And I really wish that a part of Barry Gordy's boot camp of basically training these kids how to go get his money was really getting them some help. Because so many of his acts needed it.
I mean, when you think about the time, mental health was not on an average American's mind, yet alone a Black man's mind, right?
But group dynamic should have been.
No, because it was a matter of getting the money and the way that they treated the Temptations, especially with how, Otis would say, it was just like, there were so many temptations. They were replaceable. Mm-hmm. You're replaceable when you're in a group. No one can replace, Diana Ross. She's Diana Ross. But
that's just because she was fucking the boss. No, the Temptations got Motown their first Grammy. They should have been treated with some more respect around that piece.
But it was a matter of what they could do, not who they were. Anybody could do that. There were kids. They knew there were kids that were hungry to sing. So it was just like, I'll just get the next kid that wants to be a part of this group.
Otis created that precedent with his willingness to replace people. I think maybe he didn't create it, but he definitely played into it. It didn't help their case at all. But overall, in general, okay, so we were talking about David Ruffin. David Ruffin, I wanted to talk to you about his diagnosis. So being that he was high on cocaine for the entire second episode of the miniseries and half of the first of, I diagnosed him with stimulant use disorder, severe, with the drug of choice being cocaine. That's really the only one that was shown. But it was at the time, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I'm sure he was dabbling with some weed, maybe some Quaaludes. You never really know. But all they showed was cocaine. So I just specified cocaine. We talked a little bit about his, I feel like he definitely had attachment issues. And so if he was my client, that's something that I definitely would want to work with him, moving from that anxious, preoccupied attachment state to a more secured one, and diagnose him with, okay, so this is where I need your opinion.
Okay.
I'm thinking both or one, but borderline personality disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. We don't get enough of his personal day-to-day experiences to know whether or not he was really experiencing all of the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, but a lot of his behavior is explained by some of the adverse childhood experiences that he had as a child. But what do you think about the borderline personality disorder? Would you like for me to talk about the criteria for that?
Yes, please.
All right. We'll go through the 5 or more of the following. Frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. A pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships characterized by alternating between extremes of idealization and devaluation. So going from, I really just want to sing with y'all, to being, y'all ain't nothing without David Ruffin. Identity disturbance, markedly and persistently unstable self-image or sense of self. Impulsivity in at least 2 areas that are potentially self-damaging, including spending, sex, substance abuse, reckless driving, binge eating. I think all of those except binge eating were shown. Recurrent suicidal behavior, gestures or threats, or self-mutilating behavior. Not something that we necessarily saw. But affective instability due to marked reactivity of mood, intense episodic dysphoria, irritability, or anxiety, usually lasting a few hours and only rarely more than a few days. So that irritability, definitely. I remember when he was fussing at them when they came to see him at the house. And then after they left, he started laughing. He was like, y'all tickled me. Y'all believe me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, supposed to.
Right. Like, this ain't a game. Like, this is a game for you in your mind, right? Because you do what you want to do when you want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Were there more?
Yes, a couple more. Chronic feelings of emptiness. Inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger, frequent displays of temper, constant anger, or recurrent physical fights. That definitely could be the domestic abuse. And transient stress-related paranoid ideation or severe dissociative symptoms.
I agree. And so I would say that I would go with borderline, and then, I would go borderline, and then I would do substance use, or what did you call it?
Substance use disorder, severe, with the drug of choice being cocaine.
Yes. Yeah. So that I would go borderline, because the borderline is what induced or created the substance use as a result, as a symptom. So I agree. Yeah. I mean, it was clear just based off of several instances in the movie that he definitely was more of that borderline, especially when you talk about his, like, I want to just be a part of the group too. Y'all ain't nothing without David Ruffin. So yeah, I agree.
And then, like, him being at first fine with, because in real life they said he was fine with leaving the group. Like, he understood leaving the group, but then he would just pop up at the shows. So, like, they did show a couple of times where he just popped up, and Dennis was like, "This motherfucker." You could see about it with his words. But they say he was just doing that regularly in real life, and they had to hire more security to stop him from doing that, just showing up.
Yeah. So that was actually one of the parts that I died laughing from, is because the way he snatches the phone, the microphone, and starts singing, how everybody's like, "This motherfucker!" Like, you could see it on their face.
Nigga here,
right? Like, they're performers, so they're able to keep it going. But man, Otis wanted to beat that ass, and he was like, "They want me. They want more." Like, he could not see that what he did was wrong. And so I'm not surprised that they wanted to have more security to make sure his ass did not get on that stage again.
Or just pop up in some random city.
Right. So then, because he couldn't get his way that way, now there's two temptations out there.
But did you see, like, how strategically he was, like, chipping away at Eddie?
He was.
He was like, "Well, they did this to me. How long you think before they do it to you? Look at what they doing to Paul. Here, have some cocaine."
Okay, so then that's another additional part of borderline personality, in that they're master manipulators. I think when I was practicing, it was like, especially in, like, the substance use clinics, it was like, those were probably the hardest people to work with, but actually kind of interesting. They're kind of interesting.
So fun, because, like, you're like, what the hell is going on inside of your mind? But if you are not on it every single second with them, it'll give you a damn headache, because it's so much. It's so much.
Because they learn how to manipulate the system. And that's I think that's what David Ruffin was capable of doing. He was able to manipulate the system, whether it be Motown, whether it be the actual Temptations themselves, or the individuals that made up the group, like especially Eddie. So.
Speaking of Eddie, cornbread.
Cornbread. How'd you get that name?
He said, "That ain't why they call you cornbread, is it?" He just looked at him like, why else would they call me cornbread?
Yes, he's so cute and little.
Love him. I just loved him. He's gonna throw Paul away like Alabama trash. That is still funny to me.
Because he meant it. He's gonna do my friend like that.
And he had Diana Ross before Berry Gordy.
Okay.
Yo, Eddie was fine in real life. If you everybody out there, go Google what the Temptations looked like in real life. Eddie was low key fine.
He was with that soprano voice.
Until he got them 1980s glasses that was the size of goggles. Then it wasn't cute no more.
but those were cute. I'm gonna get me some. They coming back.
Don't wear them around me. I don't know. I think I am completely biased for my love of Eddie. The only thing I really wanted to diagnose him with was his substance use.
I agree. I think Eddie's role in the group was to try to keep everybody level-headed, and I think that's where he and Otis bumped heads because, Otis was just a little above. Like he felt like he was above in some ways because he's the originator or the leader of the group. So
which
Eddie
is common with narcissism. Just throwing that out there.
So Eddie's like, well, hold up, pump your brakes now. You ain't above the group. If nobody is above the group, that means you're not above the group. So what makes you think that you're the person to make all these decisions? And so other than that, I do feel like Eddie did struggle with his substance use. But it didn't seem like it was alcoholism more so than it was cigarettes or tobacco.
And that is what I wanted to bring up. So yes, he was snorting cocaine with David. He was having a little taste there now and then with everybody else. But why is cigarette addiction not in the DSM? Because it's killing people. Eddie died from lung cancer from his 30 plus years of smoking cigarettes. Like people really struggle with quitting. People can build a tolerance. People go through withdrawal. So why is cigarette addiction, even if it's just use disorder, or like, why is that not a part of the DSM? Do you feel like it's because it's legal and the government can tax it and make money from it?
Absolutely. But here's my thing. I do feel like because it's not criminalized, that's why it's not in the DSM, because alcohol did become criminalized. In a way it did. There were purists.
Are we talking about like prohibition?
Prohibition, right?
Okay.
So prohibition came along. That changed how everybody saw alcohol. I mean, because at the very beginning, alcohol was not seen as an issue. We were drinking alcohol, and when I say we, Americans in the early 1800s were drinking alcohol, 3 times, 7 times a day. And it wasn't until people...
It's a big gap. 3 times, 7 times a day.
Well, whichever one you want to have. And so it became an issue when people were, not able to continue to live their daily functioning lives, the abuse and things of that nature, people dying from it. And so prohibition came about and wanting to control the substance. But then it did, I do feel like increasingly all of our substances that are listed in the DSM are listed because it was criminalized. And because tobacco doesn't have, hallucination and delusion and those types of effects, that
there's not an intoxicated state of cigarette. So that's why I guess I can get that. But still,
and it doesn't impair judgment, right? So it's not. It doesn't affect the mood or personality in a way. However, it is addictive in nature. So that's where it gets thrown under. I think it just gets chucked under addiction, substance use, other substance, whatever.
Yeah, it's just other. But I feel like even gambling has its own category.
Again, gambling has its effect on the nuclear system or on for that individual. So how is that gambling affecting not only that individual but the people around them? Just like other addictions, where cigarette smoking is like, okay,
it's secondhand smoke though. You still affecting the people around you if you are getting cigarettes or obtaining cigarettes over, especially with how expensive they is now. I don't know if it's just New York State, but good Lord,
it's expensive.
So I don't see how. I see how, but I just feel like it should at least be in other considerations. There should at least be a subcategory, further mentioning of it in the other. It should just get more representation of how addicting it is, how hard it is for people to quit, how impactful it is in people's day-to-day lives. And granted, times have changed where cigarette smoke is not as widely prevalent as it may have been, especially in the 60s and 70s. Like if you watch Jaws, they were smoking in the emergency room. So that has definitely changed. But there are still people who are really struggling with cigarette smoke addiction. So I just felt like it should, you know.
I think overall, the DSM does need to be updated. Absolutely. I mean, it does need to be updated. Just the same way our code of ethics are being updated, our actual standards for the counseling profession is being updated. It does stand. It does need to be updated as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, we are at DSM-5. I just expect us, if we're at DSM-5, there should be so much more that has been updated with all of the changes, with the way that the world constantly changes. With us being at 5, this is the 5th edition. This is through 5 edits, revisions, and updates. I just felt like we should be further along in a multitude of different areas. Neither here nor there. Again, we will reference that the DSM is an oppressive tool used by the larger to control the many. And that's one thing that our previous guest, Jovan, she had mentioned in, I remember we had a meeting with Dr. Umar once, and she really asked him, like, if this is such an oppressive tool, if the DSM we know that it's from a white supremacist lens. How do I most effectively do my job while still using this oppressive tool? And it was a really hard question to answer. I can't really remember the answer because the question was so dope, and I don't think the question was really answered into the way that we felt that it really needed to be as training clinicians at the time. But I feel like each clinician has to go on their journey of how to uplift while still using these oppressive tools. And it's a really hard position to be in, but I feel like it's our duty to continue to liberate each and every individual that we collectively liberate, because we don't have the power to do it. But working with those to ensure that they have all that they need to be as self-realized, actualized, and fulfilled as they possibly can.
Right. I agree. And if we're gonna change the DSM, a lot of that change is very systemic, because if we are changing our DSM, then it means that the insurance companies are gonna have to change what they deem as appropriate treatment for a given diagnosis, because insurance companies do control a lot of that. Also, I do feel that a lot of clinicians, if they're wanting to get away from that systemic oppression, is just to not use it at all. So just do a sliding scale and not involve insurance at all. But again, that goes into the individual, that goes into the type of practice that they're operating in. Because if you really don't want to continue to oppress your clients by using this tool, the only reason why we would use it is for HMO purposes. To be paid and billing insurances. So
and outline treatment to others, because your client isn't getting the outline of treatment. They are going through the experience of treatment with you. Whereas if you're communicating outwards. Anywho, let's bring it back to the Temptations. Let's talk about my personal favorite character from the movie, Paul. And the person as you have identified me as in our friendship, Paul.
Paul. So he was such a sweetie.
Yes, he was.
Love him.
I did.
I love the
And I
classic.
felt really bad laughing about it. But when he was drunk on stage and he was singing the song terribly and messing the dance moves, I said, let me find out. Let me find out Paul invented chopped and screwed. You can have your fortune told. I was like, I'm going to hell.
Yes.
I should have laughed at that.
Listen, he sung that from his gut. Okay? Because that's all. He had nothing else to give.
Told.
Listen. Yes. And just the dance move. And then when they have him actually coming back on, but someone was doing a voiceover for his part. I can't remember. Richard did the voiceover for his part. And they had the dun, dun, dun. And he woke up on the stage. Like it startled him. He was that intoxicated. You know, and then it even came down to like, you know, Eddie saying someone needs to be with him around the clock, making sure that he's keeping his hand off the bottle. You know, the dedication he had to getting him back. But again, like, I don't think substance use, honestly, because I believe even at the time, AA wasn't even around, right? So, you know, the treatment and the look of addiction was very different back then.
But like how, I really feel like, how did Eddie even feel like that was realistic? Like, to literally sit with somebody 24 hours a day and keep them from drinking.
Right. Because
like
even
the fact
Otis
that was like, his solution. Yeah.
Yeah. Because Otis is like, well, how did that work for you? Like you're around him the most. How effective were you at keeping him from not drinking? You know, and I think that was a real point. Like if someone is addicted, they're gonna get what they want. You know, the addiction, they're no longer themselves. The addiction is controlling them. So even if they are telling, you know, you as the family member or friend that I'm going to stop, the addiction says something else. And they become the addiction. They're no longer themselves. So, you know, I think with Eddie trying to do that, he didn't really understand the concept of addiction.
Right. And I was just wanted to mention that AA was around at the time. AA officially started in 1935. 1935 NA started in 51, I believe. But again, how realistic is it to expect to get to each and every single different city, locate a meeting, get them to go to the meeting, have that meeting fit in with sound check, rehearsals, actual performances, eating, sleeping. Like it just wasn't realistic without him really wanting to make that change. And in real life, it wasn't mentioned in the movie, but in real life, Paul did suffer from sickle cell anemia. And that is part of the reason why when he was out for so long, it was very difficult for him to recover. He was battling more than just alcoholism. He was dealing with a serious illness that does affect the African-American community. And that is part of that loss of being on stage, being a part of the group, it changed his entire lifestyle. And that is part of what led to the depression, the extreme substance use, and unfortunately his suicide.
Yeah. You know, every time I hear Papa was a Rolling Stone, that's a hard song to listen to. I mean, for one, it didn't match who Paul was, but the somber feeling of what they were talking about in that song matched what you were seeing in that scene of him struggling with his addiction.
Whoever arranged that score needs an Academy Award, because that music was right on time. You're right. That song, like Paul wasn't in that song. Like it didn't match what he was going through. But the depiction of Eddie, you know, rise and fall with his career, David spiraling out of control, Paul spiraling out of control, just the music all throughout the film, but especially that scene. Just chef's kiss. They did their thing.
I know. Especially that when you hear the gun pop, you know, just that moment, like that. Oh, I think that was the saddest moment for me in the movie was his suicide.
It was sad to see Paul go. I struggled with diagnosing him as well because it was a lot of like what came first, the chicken or the egg.
Right.
It was with the alcohol use disorder. Okay, yes, and it was severe in that, but also the major depressive disorder. Was it substance induced depressive disorder? Did drinking cause the depression? Was it in real life because he was struggling with an illness? Was it depressive disorder due to another medical condition? Like which one came first? And it just, all of it together, because, you know, it was told from Otis's point of view and we don't really know the specifics of it. It just is a bad cocktail for, unfortunately, the loss of an incredible person. But I think that the movie did a good job of addressing suicide, how real it is. And I think that Paul kind of gave hints and everyone just assumed that, oh, he's not in the group. He's just sad, but it'll be okay type thing. But he told Otis, he said, I'm gonna die. I swear, I'm gonna die. Like he told Otis, I'm going to die if I'm not in the group. But he could not handle the loss of performance. Could not handle being ill. Could not, you know, the depressive symptoms, topped with alcohol, which is a depressant anyway. It just, I feel that we don't address suicide and suicidality in Black men enough. I feel like the questions that we use to even address suicidality could be more culturally relevant, especially when working with men. Like as we saw with Paul, men do tend to use more deadly means to hurt themselves. And so they are more likely to die from a suicide attempt. And anytime working with men, just being purposeful in the way that you ask questions instead of saying, do you want to kill yourself? Just coming out like that would get a very different response from, do you feel like a burden to anybody? Do you feel that anybody's life would be better if you just weren't here? Those are very different questions than, do you want to kill yourself? Sometimes in a crisis state, you do need to be as frank as that. You do need to see if that person does have a plan and how far it does go. But I feel like ideation could be detected a lot sooner if more clinicians were intentional in the way that they addressed concerns.
I agree. When looking at the movie, it started off with Paul just drinking milk from, his thermos. Right. To him actually drinking from David's, flask again. And so to me, it seemed like Paul was from the depiction of the movie, and I'm looking just from the movie, he seemed like the happy, upbeat, let's dance, let's sing. He was the dancer, he was the choreographer, if you will, of the Temptations. And so when I look at that and see that, I think maybe it was depression and then substance use, because and then here's this misconception that just because someone's upbeat, the dancer, the clown,
that they can't be
person,
depressed.
Exactly. Right. So just looking at the depiction of him is just like, oh no, it must be alcohol then depression. But for me, especially being someone who struggles with depression and anxiety personally, it's like people think that, oh, when Rosie show up, she's on, she's ready, she's the person to keep everybody laughing and clowning. But deep down inside, I'm trying my best to show that I'm not hurt, so no one's concerned about me. I don't want you to think about that. I want you to think about something else. And so I do feel like Paul was more focused on the group and performing because he didn't want to worry or think about his own depression. Because in some ways, I think he was in denial of what he was really feeling, because no, that can't be me. I'm not that somber, sad person. I want to dance. I want to be happy. So alcohol will make me feel better. And I can be more socially interactive when I don't want to be, because my depression is kicking in. My depression tells me to isolate, but alcohol gives me the liquid courage to be around and to socialize. And on top of that, when people are socializing, they're drinking anyway, right? So it's like, well, let me be a part of this, because then at least this will make me feel like I'm more of myself, when in actuality, we're actually causing more harm than good.
And Paul had a lot of pressures that like were hinted on in the film. He was already married. He had 4 kids by the time that the group was just started. Like he really had a lot that he was trying to hold down on top of that boisterous personality that he did have. And while it's infectious, people expect you to be able to maintain that at all times, which is unfair and unreasonable. You are not always in your regular life anyone's hired entertainment. And thank you for, disclosing and sharing. And I can say that is why, part of the reason why I am so protective over you. And I don't like it when people try to hype you up. Like when you have that high energy, I don't like it when people try to hype it up and like, yes, let's get Rosie to dance. Let's get Rosie to do this. And I'd be watching, like, she's not a fucking clown. Leave her alone. She'll dance if she want to dance. Gosh, sit your ass down somewhere. Get the fuck out of our face.
right.
And that is, I really wish that somebody would have done that for Paul, because like how you said, when you're socializing, a lot of times alcohol is involved. And I just feel like it personally for me, I try to be cautious in like, come on, have a drink with me. After you tell me once, that needs to be me letting that go, because people do try to like peer pressure people into drinking. After somebody tells you no once, okay, maybe the second time, have a drink with your friend, like Blue said. But after that, it really needs to stop, because for somebody, for one person, you could just be encouraging them to sit down and socialize and share a drink with you. But for somebody else that might have an addictive personality, you could be literally lighting a match in their life.
Yes.
And so, people need to be conscientious of how much you try to push what it is that you're wanting from someone on others, because like the old saying goes, you really never know what other people are dealing with. And so you need to just make sure that you are handling things how you would want to be handled.
Right.
And so, all right.
I think
that was the hardest. Loss.
I think so. And then another thing that I'm noticing also, not only the abuse of artists by record labels, but the actual substance use that happens with a lot of artists as well. And the performer, you have to be a performer, you have to be on. So the desire and the need, again, we're human, we have our ups and downs. And so when you're having your day of being down and just naturally just going through the phases of being a human and having emotion, you don't have time to be down. You don't have time to really feel those emotions normally or naturally. So then there is this increased desire to be like, okay, now I need to get something to keep me active. I need to get something to make me feel like I'm up rather than down. Or maybe I'm way too wired, I'm way too hype and I need something to calm me down. Right. So it's like like we said, like which comes first, the mental illness or the actual substance use? Because a lot of people may not realize, and in some cases it could be bipolar disorder, where someone, it could be extremely manic and productive and then crash. Right. And so now we got to get them back productive. So now we need to give them a stimulant to get them productive, but maybe that's not exactly what they needed for actually treating their mental health. So a lot of times it seems as if artists are, self-prescribed, self-medicating in a sense, rather than being, hey, record label, and I don't even know who they would go to, PR, whomever. I mean, think of it, the perfect example to me is like in recent time is Kanye.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Right. Like who can he really go to say, hey guys, this is where I am. I need help. Right. Because they're not designed to help them. The record label, the record industry, like music industry is not designed to help their performers. It's designed to get money.
And one thing that I definitely wanted to highlight about Kanye, like, yes, I don't agree with any of the things that he's been saying or doing recently. But I know that a lot of people, a quick go-to and a dismissive statement for him has been, he does this when music is about to come out. Every time he does this, he has a project. But if you know anything about the treatment of bipolar disorder, there are a lot of people who feel like the medication that is prescribed for bipolar disorder, it inhibits their creativity. And so he might be feeling like he is in a need to be creative and can't because of the medication. And so in order to be creative, in order to have all of those, that genius level that he does have to create music, to hear sounds, to create beats, he goes off of his medication. And going off his medication, he then has these manic episodes where he says these things, he does these things, all of this, the circus that creates around him. And so, yes, it does coincide with him releasing projects, not just as a publicity stunt, but because he's going off his medication in order to feel creative again, because a lot of people do mention feeling like their creativity is stifled and that they can't be productive. They can't work when they're on that medication. And so that is something that I did recognize with the coincidence of those things the timing going kind of hand in hand. And so the record industry kind of plays a big, like you were just saying, but big part of that. And so we kind of see the correlation between what's happening more recently with Kanye, as well as how mental health was being treated by the music industry back then, and how they weren't getting what they needed. And really, unfortunately, a lot hasn't changed. People still aren't being able to get what they need. And that is what disheartens me. And especially that all of the people that we have been talking today are talented, beautiful Black men who just were unable to get the help and the assistance that they needed.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And so unfortunately, the Temptations movie is really just, it's a great movie to watch, just, to understand the history of our music, the culture that we developed through Motown, right? And it pays homage to them. However, it does give us this stark reality of the limitations and the imperfections of our music industry, and how much we really need to give a little bit more support and treat I would say celebrities, but our musical performers, and realize that they're human. They're not
athletes
objects.
as well. Athletes as well, performers that's a lot of pressure and that's a lot of demand that I don't think that civilians really understand the full pressure of. Right.
And so, we tend to put that added pressure on them by, not giving them the space or just the credit of being honest and open about their actual mental health, and feeling like they have to keep it from us. And in some ways, I don't blame them for keeping it from us, because we can be pretty cruel and harsh people when it does come down to someone being vulnerable and saying, hey, I'm actually not that perfect.
We're a bunch of assholes. We're a bunch of meme-making Twitter finger bitches.
Right? And
we're the ungrateful sons of bitches.
We are. And we put our celebrities and people so high on these pedestals that we expect them to be perfect and not have issues. But I think it's high time that we change that narrative, that we allow these people to be human.
I agree. And I also think that Temptations is just an awesome, all-around, great miniseries. Does this one count as a musical? Because there was music in this one too.
I do feel like it counts as a musical. I would categorize it as a musical. I'm not. Trust me. I'm doing this movie and sitcom podcast like I'm some like movie
aficionado,
guru.
Right?
I know. I know nothing about film. Like I hardly remember the damn character's name. Okay, and actors and actresses' real name. So, but for me, the real right, no matter. The real issue here is just really highlighting the love for the art, and it was masterfully like just created and put together. Maybe Otis' story might be a little off, but I did enjoy this musical.
Yeah, it was hell off. He got sued, but I I'm glad that he was willing to take that one from the team because it gave us a great something to watch on VH1 like 4 times a week because it comes on all of the time. But if you would like to support the show to help us get more content out to you all, you can visit our website and you can follow the support the show link, become a Patreon member, or donate on our Cash App at $the DSM podcast. Now, we're happy to get the kind of money that jingles, but we'd rather get the kind that folds, like Lisa McDowell said. And as always, be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a comment because we are counselors and actually care what you have to say. Until next